This week on Paint Every Day, I'm going to be showing you how to turn this into this. Hey guys, welcome back to Paint Every Day. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this epic lava fortress. It's got these removable bridges, which can make each game unique and interesting. As well as it's got some of these cool lava buckets, and these can be used to either block line of sight in some cases or just block off paths. And then this project is super easy to make and paint. All you need is just some chipboard. You can buy that in bulk on Amazon, super cheap. I'll leave a link down below. As well as you just need some granny grading, which you can find at any craft or sewing store. It's super cheap as well. And then also just some hot glue for the lava. You could use resin for this, but hot glue is definitely cheaper and probably easier to work with. So yeah, this is a great project for beginners, or just people looking to spice up their games of D&D or tabletop wargaming. Alright, without further ado, let's get right into it. So as you can see in the bottom left, you just want to fill up all the crevices with hot glue. It helps to have it on a higher setting so the lava will flow into the cracks better and have a bit more working time. Although you don't want to agitate it too much because that will leave stringy bits that won't look good once it's painted. I unfortunately had some places like this in mine, but they can be fixed by putting some more hot glue on the top. I just repeated this process for the whole board. Now time for the granny grading, or cross-stitching mesh, whatever you like to call it. I was fortunate enough to find a packing divider that was exactly 8.5 by 11, so the mesh fit right over it and I could trace out all my shapes at once. I wasn't sure what glue to use to attach this, so I just decided on PVA. But let me know in the comments what glue works best for gluing plastic to cardboard. Here's where I made a minor mistake in cutting out the chipboard to go around the edges of the granny grading, and instead of doing it all in one piece, I didn't really know how to do that, so I just cut it out in small little pieces, which looked a lot worse. And unfortunately I already glued it down, so I couldn't change it afterward. But for your consideration, I would recommend doing the chipboard cladding in all one piece of chipboard rather than cutting it out in sections, because it looks a lot cleaner and is a lot easier to do. Also, Wylock from Wylock's Armory came up with this technique with the granny grading and has a lot of good tips on how to do it efficiently, so go check them out. Here I'm using one test piece to make the measurements for all the rest of the border pieces. So I put a little mark on this piece so I didn't lose it, and I just used this for all of the walkways. and then I just glue those down like the rest of them. Next, I want to make some simple bridges to span the gap between the platforms. I made some pieces to go on top of the walkways out of 1/4-inch strips of chipboard. And for the edges, I just used some thin strips of granny grating. I'm telling you guys, you only need 2 things for this project. In all, I made 4 large walkways and 2 small ones, which are about half the size. For the lava buckets, I decided to use egg cartons because all the plastic containers I could find melted from the hot glue. I just cut out sections and trimmed them down so they look relatively even. Then I added some square pieces of chipboard to the sides to make it look more interesting. I didn't measure these, I just sized them based on the egg carton. To make a spilled lava bucket, I attached the hot glue to it on a piece of wax paper so it wouldn't stick. I made sure to prop up the bucket so it wouldn't droop as the glue dried. The main purpose of this bucket is to look cool and also to block line of sight because the other buckets are a bit too short for that. Next, I just Mod Podged all the card and chipboard parts to give them some more strength and rigidity. I guess Mod Podge is a verb now. Huh. After that, I took it outside to prime. You're going to want to spray prime here because acrylic paints don't stick to plastic. Unfortunately, the prime creates some weird bubbles that look good on the lava but not on the platforms. Also, the hot glue strings that I missed removing were glaringly visible, but this can be fixed by lightly going over the project with a heat gun before painting. Speaking of painting, I painted the lava with my airbrush. Now before you click away because you don't have an airbrush, you can also do this with wet blending as well, it just takes longer. More on that later in the video. I started with light gray to serve as a nice base coat for the lava. Next, I added a thin layer of red. By the way, I'm not using mini paints here, just cheap craft paints. They work just fine through the airbrush. I followed that up with some orange directed more toward the center of the lava stream, if I could help it. And finally, some yellow used even more sparingly. And as you can see here, we also got some free object source lighting from the overspray. I started off painting the platforms by dry brushing some bronze color onto the granny grading. Make sure to do this step first so you don't have to worry about getting paint on the edges. And here's why. I'm using some black paint to touch up the edges and cover up the bronze and airbrush overspray. And finally, I'm dry brushing the edges with gunmetal. Not complete coverage to make the metal look more worn. I also painted up the bridges in the same fashion. To finish off the rock, I did a slight dry brush with dark gray to sort of highlight the raised areas. I also didn't like how bright the metal was, so I darkened it down with a homemade black wash. Alright, here's where I'm going to show you how to wet blend this lava. Like the airbrush, I started out with a light base coat. Then I applied my three main colors roughly where they should go. Then, with a clean brush, I just mix the colors together. It's that simple. Keep in mind though, you may need more than one coat, especially if you're using craft paints like me. Also, don't be afraid to add more colors in, even after you've started blending. After those are dry, the board was finished. This can be used in many ways. If you make more of these, you can make a cool Wargaming board with them, or they can be useful for D&D and other RPG games. It can also be used for Warcry Catacombs. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did. If you did, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, and all that good stuff. It really helps. Alright, that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching, so do yourself a favor, and make sure you paint every day.